Hey guys, James at Kartz-N-Fartz. So today we're going to do a 60 amp hour lithium battery conversion on this 2018 Club Car Precedent. So pretty simple stuff. I've done a ton of these, but this new 60 amp hour battery is the latest thing that's out at the time of this filming. It is August of 2024. I know video content stays on the web a long time, but for now, this is pretty exciting for Eco Battery because the price is about $500 cheaper than the 105 amp hour. You're going to get actually a very strong, I think they call it a 3C rated lithium inside the battery. It will handle a lift kit if you're going to add a lift kit down the road. So the previous battery this size in this price range was the 72 amp hour. However, they did not recommend it for a golf cart with lifted tires. Now this one does not have a lift on it, not yet, but my customer is wanting to do it in the future. So when we get finished with this, we're going to do a range test and see exactly how far we can go on a fully charged 60 amp hour battery. This one has stock motor, stock cables, stock controller. So the only difference is just going to be a nice little lithium upgrade. So if you've seen my channel or watched my videos in the past, you know I do this with one hand. So I'm going to try to go step by step on anything that you may run across in your garage, since I do all my repairs in my garage. So anyway, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the batteries out and hose off the tray. It's a pretty simple process. This is probably taking about 1/3 of the time getting everything clean. So let's go jump right on in it. And then as the video goes along, I'll show you the different components that comes in the bundle kit. And don't forget, I am a lithium Eco Battery lithium dealer, so you can buy directly from me. I can ship, drop ship. You can pick it up locally. I do local installs, and you know that's not a lot of time for me to do the local installs. And if you do that, I generally give you free installs. So it's that simple. Eco has done an awesome job with their bundle kits to make sure you got everything that you need. So anyway, let's get started. Like I said, this is a 2018. You see those US batteries are a little bit tired. So what I'm gonna do first, and what I'm gonna recommend for you guys, is take a photo. If there's any wires going to any of the batteries, then do a voltage check now before you take this thing apart. So before you get started, first thing you want to do is obviously cut the run tow switch off. And let's look here. So I see one wire going over here, and I do so many of these. This is my main negative. I know that's 16 volts. I'd almost bet anything that is for your headlight switch. And as I'm looking around at all the connections, I don't see anything else that this cart, you know, either has or is you know, I need to worry about. So I am going to wire that to the 12 volt reducer, and we're getting ready to clean all this mess out. So I did notice it has a factory USB charging port, but that's going to run off pack voltage and then it reduces down. But for the headlight switch, which is right there, yes, I am definitely going to install that with the Eco Battery reducer. So I'm gonna go ahead and start taking this apart and cleaning it, and then when we come back, we'll jump on the next step. All right guys, so I got the batteries, got it hosed out really good, had a lot of old golf cart tees and ball markers and everything else. I am going to save one of my J hooks. That one's actually in pretty good shape. It just looks terrible. I just need to clean it up with a wire brush. Next step is I'm gonna pull the floor mat up. There's gonna be, I think these are T30s, but I'm gonna pull 4, 2 on each side, pull that up and lift it up. And while I've got that T30 out, I'm gonna take 4 of this off from the body. So you've got 2 up front, and then you've got 2 in the back, because I'm just going to just lift it a little bit. And then inside of your forward reverse switch, there's 2 more. These aren't T30s, I think these are T20s, but let me go grab my Torx sockets and I'll verify that. All right, so once I get those bolts out, now's a good time to take your camera and take a photo of those wire colors. I don't think you jack it up real hard, but anyway, go ahead and take a photo so you'll know exactly what size or what orientation it is. I usually take a screwdriver and I just prime gently to slide those out. I do need 2 hands and one's holding the camera right now. When I get to these side skirts, I like to use my door panel removal tool. I think there's a clip somewhere around here, maybe one here, and I know there's one about right there, and it might even be another one here. So it's kind of sandwiched in between there, so if you pull that in there and just kind of, again, this is a lot more difficult than it sounds. Well, number one, I'm not left-handed, so let's get this on there. And there you go, there's one. Get another one, and there's the other one. You can see it in right there. So ideally, you really just want to, and there's going to be one right here behind here, and by this time you can probably just pull it loose. The reason I'm pulling it loose, so I can lift this mat out the way. Now, once I lift this mat out the way, I'm gonna carry it back outside and I'm gonna hose it down, then dry it off, because it's a lot easier working with something clean. Before you see me on the next video, you're going to see that I'm going to remove all these. It's also time to remove this panel here. So it is a, oh, and by the way, that was a T25 that was underneath there. So I'm going to use my T30. Up here, this little thin one here, that one is a T15. So we've got 3 screws to remove, 2 T30s, and this one here has a T15. Let's remove that, and there's going to be one plug over here on this side. Your reverse buzzer's about right there. Unplug that, and I may have to unplug the headlight switch, and I'm just going to remove that out. And by the way, I'm going to get to this, but normally us builders, we put the headlight switch right where that little indention is at. Well, there's another indention there. That's ideally where you want your eco gauge to go. So when we get to that point, you'll see how I'm gonna put the eco gauge here, and I'm gonna have to reposition this over here. So anyway, let's go ahead. Now that I've got that loose, I'm just gonna kind of rock it out a little bit and then pull down on it. There's a little clip right there, and you'll see it once I get it loose. There we go, right there. So there's that clip right there. And so that is what that T15 fits into. So you can see this is from your bucket harness. So actually I'm gonna have 2 plugs. I'm gonna unplug this one, and then that's the one to the main wiring harness, which goes to your diagnostic port, your key switch, and everything else. But there are 2 yellow wires here. Off this bucket harness, there's another little piece that goes up front for your headlight. That can just rest right there. But right here's where we're gonna need to put our gauge. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug these 2. And another thing also, you're gonna have a gauge for your battery condition. These little dummy lights are designed to reflect off of the factory setup, which is lead acid. We're not going to use that, so I'm going to unplug at least one of them, maybe both of these, but I'm going to leave the light in the hole just so there's not a hole there. But I don't want to trust the factory thinking it's got lead acid when it actually has lithium. We're going to trust the gauge here. So let me go ahead and unplug this harness here. All right, guys, you know, I just thought of something. I might not have had to take this loose. I'm gonna leave it loose. I'm not gonna take the wires off, because I'm only gonna lift this maybe a 1/4 inch, and we're gonna get this panel out. So the next step before I rinse this thing off is we've got to get that cover off. So this will fit on the new eco charging port. So if you see those holes, what you'll do is you'll just take a pick. I'm trying to do this again left-handed. There you go. And you'll stick it in the hole, and you'll pull it towards the middle of the hole. And what that will do is that will bring that right out without breaking those little tabs. So super simple. Now the next thing I do, I usually stack all my bolts right up here, and this is actually what they call the ball holder. So stack your nuts in your ball holder. Take that wherever you want to take it. So we have 3 bolts for this little kick panel, and that is that T30 again. And a lot of times they'll get sand in there, so I'll just take my little pick and just try to get this. I mean, look at all that sand in there. So try to get the sand out of there. The reason for that, you don't want it stripping and jacking up your bit. So let's get that out of there. And another thing that I like to do too, once I rinse it off, get all this sand from around these bolts, and this is what actually holds in your brake pedal assembly. So your M core, if you know anything about these club cars, they usually have about a 10-year lifespan. I've got videos on how to replace those. But I want to get the sand out of those. I'm gonna hose this off really good, and then I'm gonna saturate this down with WD-40. So we don't have to go underneath there during this installation, but if this customer, which he's gonna be a customer for life once he sees how good a job we're gonna do, if he ever has to replace the M core, I want to make it easy on myself. So I'm gonna saturate these two down with WD-40. This actually goes straight into the frame. The frame goes right along in there. The other side, it just goes into plastic. You don't have the trouble with them like you do these. So now that I've got everything loose up here, you see that just pulls straight up. Yeah, I don't think I really have to take that loose, so you can skip that step. But I've got to take those 3 screws loose, and I'm gonna need both hands for that. Then I'm gonna push it outside, rinse all this off, dry it down so I can start working. All right, guys, so this did lift up just like I told you it would. So when I lifted that up, you would not have believed all the caked up sand and everything else that was underneath here. And you know what? This may not matter to a lot of people, but I'm the installer, it matters to me. So taking that few extra minutes, I dried it off. This will definitely, what I think is going to help me down the road when I have to work on this thing. So anyway, got that done. And I really don't think you need to take that loose now that I was able to lift it up pretty easily. So there's one other thing I want to show you. So this is your, what they call a bucket harness for your headlight switch. What a lot of installers do when they install the headlights, they just leave these wires tucked in between the batteries. Well, this is actually the 3 wires for your brake lights when you get ready to do a street legal upgrade kit. So what he should have done, the installer, they should have shoved the wires through here, come up down through here, down this little track right here, and just leave these dangling down there. So now if down the road this customer wants to upgrade to turn signals, brake lights, my wires are already run, I don't have to pull the floor mat up again. Now you can see the bolts really good. And by the way, that's how you adjust your brakes, underneath this little access cover right here, which just has a little Christmas tree push in. But there's them bolts I told you about. So I'm getting ready to saturate those with WD-40. And again, this is just for the future. So I'm gonna finish drying this off, and we're gonna jump on to the next. While that's drying, let's go step over here. This is my dash panel. So I'm gonna relocate the headlight switch to that little point right there. And I believe that is, let's see if I can see what size it is. It's on that largest one, which is a 1/2 inch. So if you've got this type of headlight switch, it's a 1/2 inch hole. Make sure there's nothing behind it, which there's not. There's your reverse buzzer I was telling you about. So let's see here. And again, you know what? I want to show you me doing it, but I'm by myself. So I'm gonna take 2 hands to do this, but I'm gonna drill a hole there, and then I'm gonna remove this headlight switch and position it over here. Now the question is, how are we going to get a hole on this? Here's the bit that I need for the gauge. That is a 2 3/64 or a 52 millimeter. That's just a cheap bimetal bit that I grabbed off of Amazon. I usually on plastic only, but if you know anything, how am I going to get that drill bit down a 1/2 inch hole? Well, I kind of came up with an answer on that. So this is an old piece that I drilled from a previous Eco battery install. And if you look at those little nubs, you can see that it was exactly centered, and it had the little indention, just like that little indention right there. So what I did was, I think that came off a flat screen TV mount. So I drilled a hole big enough to get it in there, and I think that will fit in that hole, and that will allow me to use the existing hole in this to center that hole again. So if you don't have one of these that you've already drilled out, then I'm trying to think what you would do. I guess you would take this bit and just drill another piece of plastic and just make your own, and somehow or another try to shim it to where whatever size drill bit that is will fit in the middle of that. So let me knock that out and we'll, all right, I really wasn't thinking, all you need is that, really. So that is a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna take 2 hands, I'm gonna shove it in the middle of that, then I'm gonna push my bit through there, and that's what's gonna leave me with that. That was one of these at one time. So again, let me take 2 hands and let me push that in there. If for some reason that hole's a little bit smaller, then I will, where did it go? I just had it. Right there. So I'll take my little step up bit and I will make sure, yeah, because it looks a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna make sure it's the same size as that 1/2 inch on my step up bit. And then I'm gonna shove that in there and use that as like a sleeve so I can shim it up so I can get a straight drill, put that hole in there. All right, that worked. So I got a place for my headlight switch to go. All that does is slide on with that collar. It will make a mess, so just be prepared for that. But I'll wipe that out, and then next thing we need to do is put this together so we're ready to mount it. All right, guys, I guess now's the time to tell you what's gonna come in your bundle kit. So here's my 60 amp hour battery. Here's my battery charger. It's gonna be built on inboard. Over here, this is my LCD gauge. I'm getting ready to open it up in a second. We're gonna mount it in this hole. Here's my voltage reducer with a wiring harness. Again, we're gonna go through all this. And I just unboxed it, but that is your charging port, which, whoops, that is going to go in place of the Club Car charging port. It's got 3 screws. I'm gonna leave it over here because we're gonna get to that pretty soon. So let me unbox this. All right, so here's your voltage reducer. And on the end there, it's gonna tell you the input, output. And remember, the harness is gonna pop into, or insert into this connector. You got a fuse going in, fuse going out. You've got your cable for your meter. And at the back of the meter, you'll notice there is a, what, an 8-pin and a 4-pin, which is gonna be on this end of it. And then the other end has a 90-degree DIN plug. That's gonna plug into the battery itself. And then we're going to use this. This is a new safety device they came out with, or communication device, should I say, between the battery and the charger. Again, more safety to make sure this lithium is safe. And I'll talk to you about when we plug that in. So also, Eco, give a little shout out. You give us plenty of cardboard to recycle. Holy cow, when you get finished with this install, you're going to have a big old pile of cardboard because they wrap everything up individually. And I may not have mentioned this yet, but this is the same voltage reducer for anything from a 51 volt up to a 70 volt Eco battery. So they do a great job by not making most of these components Kartz specific. So that means there's a lot better chance of them having this in stock if you ever needed one. Probably also keeps the cost down. But this same gauge right here, I mean, this works on, I think, everything. I think it works on 36 volt or 38 volt all the way up to the 70. So pretty simple. They all mount up the same way. They got a little U-bolt, 7mm bolts. So we're going to slide this in right here. There we go. So when we get finished with it, that's where it's going to be mounted, right there. Got your headlight switch, other side of the key, and that. So we'll go ahead and put that U-clamp behind here, tighten it up with a 7mm deep wall, and get ready to run our wires from behind the dash along the side, and I'll show you that. All right, guys, I'm gonna try not to skip around too much. I get my little mode, and I like to get things done. So you've got 3 Phillips head screws, 1, 2, 3, and you've got 3 ears on the new charging port. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the old charging port, and let's get that started. All right, show you a little trick. Once you get all the screws loose, twist it upside down, kind of wiggle it a little bit. It will come straight out the back. I've had all kind of people I've seen on videos, cut this wire, cut this wire. Nah, you don't need to do all that. Now, I will tell you this, these wires go behind that switch panel. So that's gonna be my next step, is to remove the switch panel so I can uninstall this and not just clip wires and leave wires laying around. So you're gonna need to take that T40 again, take that 1 screw off, and I'll show you how that. All right, so I kind of jumped ahead. I went ahead and mounted that with my 3 retained hardware, and I'm gonna leave that loose until I'm ready to secure it. So I've taken my T40 out. Now this panel should slide forward. Get that bucket harness out the way. Now if you have an OBC cart, you'll probably see an OBC sticking through here. But right now the negative cable is coming underneath the bottom. If you have OBC, it comes through there. So, all right, so let's see if I can magically do this with one hand. Ta-da, it worked. There is a zip tie, if you can see the tip of my finger, that's going to hold all these wires together. It looks like that one's already broken, which is good. That saves me time to cut it. So I'm going to get that out the way. And what I'm going to do now is with this existing wiring harness, charging port, excuse me, wiggle that around. And guys, it is this one right here. So if you notice this one, you've got a ground going to that 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. So I'm gonna unplug this from my controller. This one's a 2018 Club Car. And that way you can access that nut down there. So I'm gonna loosen that up and take that wire loose. The other end of that wire goes to this fuse, which also has a zip tie. So let's go ahead and cut that loose. And again, one-handed, hopefully you can see what all I'm doing. So when I take that loose, and then there's going to be a blue wire, we're going to unplug that and not worry about it. It'll be fine to leave it dangling. So there's 3 wires coming out of this charging port harness. So you got the black wire, which we're going to take loose with a 1/2 inch. I usually use this little stubby because it's not that much torque on there. Take that loose, put the nut back in there. Unplug the blue wire. Can I do that with one hand? Yep, sure can. So the exposed end comes with the harness, and then the other side goes to your solenoid. Let's move that out of the way. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take that 1/2 inch nut off, or 13, and I'm gonna take that ring terminal off. When I do that, that whole harness will come out. So I'm gonna do that with 2 hands. So I got everything loose, and if you notice, there it is right there. So it's gonna take some wiggling because it's around this little rat's nest, but you'll see the 3 wires, the blue wire, the black wire, and the red wire. I've got my solenoid tight again, and here's a little fun fact in case you were wondering. So that little pin that I had to unplug, that little 4-pin connector, let me tell you what that is. All that is an extension harness that goes through the main harness. Whoop, I don't have it in there right now, for your access port right here. So if you have a scanner like this, a Kartz scanner, so if you have a Kartz scanner to read codes and do diagnostics, it's got a round port, 4-pin port that goes underneath here, which you know goes right there. But what happens when these ports get corroded, which they do, they do get corroded. So some people don't even know this. I had to learn, someone shared it with me. If you pull that pin off, your adapter harness comes off. Guess what? That's the exact shape as that 4-pin right there. So if you crawl underneath the cart and take this panel loose, you can actually plug in directly to the controller and read the codes if you're having trouble up front. Now let's see if I can find that. There we go, right there. All right, double check. That's okay to leave loose. It's insulated. That's plugged back in. I made sure that was good and tight. So I'm ready to fold this back up once I take the rest of that out, and let's get ready for the next step. Came all the way out. And as unfortunate as it works perfectly fine, it's going in the trash can. Man, I take so many of these things out, it's almost a joke. So one thing I usually do is I pop this cover off, if I can get it off, and there's a 30-amp fuse in there. You might can use that somewhere down the road with an emergency. Other than that, this joker here is going in the trash can. Okay, so I've got that secured back, my run-to plate. Next, I'm going to mount my voltage reducer. The place I like to mount them is right here. It's out of the way. There's going to be plenty of room right there, so I'm going to mount it there. This is the one part, Eco, guys, if y'all are listening, there's no hardware for that, so you need to come up with your own hardware. So if I look at the back side, you can see you've got 2 mounting holes there, 2 mounting holes there, but see that plug? no way to get a screw to it. So I'm definitely not gonna take that apart. So you're only gonna need 3 screws. The good thing about a Precedent, there ain't nothing behind here. So I'm gonna take 3 self-tapping screws because I cannot get behind that portion, and I'm going to mount it there, and I'm gonna raise it a little bit off the floor. The reason for that, I don't want this harness getting kinked at the bottom. So let's go ahead. All right guys, so I've got the voltage reducer mounted. This is the harness that snaps into it. Now, I've done a bunch of these, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you. If you're doing this on a Precedent, if you're doing something else, you might not want to do this right yet, but I know that this wire is going to be too long. This orange wire is your trigger wire. It's going to hook to your dark blue wire. Let's pull this over here. So here's my dash panel. It's going to hook to this dark blue or blue wire instead of the green, the blue wire. That's the switch side. So the green's going to be constant 48 volts, but when you cut the key on, it energizes this blue wire. So I've got a fancy connector. I'm going to show you about that, how to hook it. But for now, I'm going to lay that down where I don't scratch the lens. But for now, I need to get some of this protective coating off, this sheathing. Now, remember, Eco uses the same harness for every application, so for the Precedent, you don't need that much. If anything, it's going to be very difficult to get it along this track with as thick as it is. So I'm just going to run just the orange wire. So got to show you a trick that I learned off one of the other videos. This is a sewing stitch remover. So if I can remove this. So if you look at that, so it's got a little razor blade underneath that red bulb. And I'll try to do this on the ground. So if you've ever messed with these wires and they've been taped up, which Eco does a pretty good job of that, you can actually slide it underneath it. Let's find out where the crease is. Looks like it's about right there. You slide it underneath there and pull it. Don't pull it towards you, pull it away from you, and you can cut the tape all the way down. And so I am going to cut probably all but about a foot after it starts coming out with these wires. That's all I need. I need the bare wire so it'll fit in that little recessed area in the floor. Right. So if you can tell, I've got that thing stripped down pretty far. And so now I'm going to take my scissors, be sure I don't cut the orange wire, bumping that with my left hand. So we're going to cut that and all that. Voila, trash. So now I am going to place this harness. I'm going to plug it up. I'm going to be real careful to make sure I don't bend any of these male flat terminals, spade terminals. And I'm going to plug it up. I'm going to route it right through the middle where all the other harness and bucket harness. I'm going to come through this hole out from this side. That's why I had to remove that plate. Take a 45 or 90 degree angle, then another 90, and I'm going to feed it through this track. And then I'm going to take some masking tape and tape it down, and I'm going to have that wire coming up to where the ignition switch will be. All right, you'll see that in a second. All right, guys, so I've got that plugged in to the harness plugged into my voltage reducer, fed it through here, went inside that hole, down through here, fed the wire through here, and if you can see this, I actually taped it a couple places as I went up. That's just kind of secure it. The floor mat will hold it down and hold it flush inside of that hole. But you can see that's a tight fit. That's why I took the covering off of that orange trigger wire. Now what I also didn't talk about it yet, I took the harness for my battery meter, and if you remember, one side has the DIN connector, so I fed it backwards. So I had enough that I thought maybe give myself 6 or 7 inches I can tuck behind here. There's a little bit of room. I'm not gonna say it ain't gonna be tight, but there's a little bit of room. And that's gonna plug in the back of my meter. I'll make sure I've got it right where I need to have it. So I ran it backwards, anything excessive on this side. And actually, I need to go ahead and shove that through. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Pull it right here. And just be a little gentle because you do have some connections, those can connections I talked about. I hope you're trying to do this with 2 hands and not one. There we go. So I've got it. So my battery connection is going to be about right here. That's plenty enough sticking out. And anything excessive on this cable where I'm gonna stuff it at, I'm gonna zip tie it and I'm gonna keep it behind the body right here. There's plenty of room back there. So I've got the length that I think I need. So you can see it's already starting to neaten up a little bit. That harness is gonna go over to the gauge. This one here, if you see that circle, that's where your ignition switch is. So I've got myself enough space there. Now I need to put a connector on there. The connector I like to use are these, and I really don't know what the proper name of them are, but I call them add-a-link. I may bend that down just a little bit. So I've got my female end. This will be crimped on to the orange wire. This female end will plug to where this blue end was, kind of like this. Well, it's a tight fit, so it will plug onto there. And then I will plug the blue end to that little tab that's sticking out. So it just makes a real neat install. You know, when you buy this eco battery, you own the battery. So if you decide to convert this cart back to lead acid and keep your eco battery, you can unplug all this stuff and plug everything back up just like it was from the factory. So you have to cover up that hole. But anyway, that is possible. But anyway, I like these little connectors. They're cheap. I buy them by the bag. I think that's about the second or third bag I've been through. I don't know how many's in a bag, a bunch. But anyway, so let's go ahead and crimp this onto my orange wire and get it ready for me to place this dash panel in place. Remember, there's two harnesses. The orange wire, which is the trigger wire for your voltage reducer. And then you've got the, I think it's an 8-pin and a 4-pin, I believe is what it is. And that plugs into the back of your voltage. All right, so now that I'm getting ready to put my dash panel back together, I've got enough extra where I can take two hands and plug it to that blue wire of my ignition switch, and then plug the blue wire in the other side of that spade connector. I can plug up my, where is it at? Here it is right here. I can plug up my 8-pin and my 4-pin to my battery meter. This particular cart has a USB charger, so I unplugged it. When I unplug the dash, I'll plug it back up. And then there's one other main harness. That's where your key switch and your diagnostic port go through. It plugs up right here. I've already plugged my light harness back up. That gray wire right there, that is for the ultimate light kit for your brake lights and turn signals. This cart does not have it, so you do not have to use that wire. So don't think you left something undone. So once I get all that in place, I'm gonna take this whole panel, I'm gonna kind of hit it at a slight angle up and then pull it down. And then I'm gonna use that T15 with my drill at a slow speed and try to grab that metal hole right there. And once it sucks it up, then I can put my T30s left and right. So don't forget about your two yellow wires, which used to go right here, but now they come over here to your headlights. All right, guys, I'm never gonna say if you did it the right way, it's gonna look like this. I'm just gonna say if you did it my way, it looks like this. So you got your gauge, your key switch, headlight switch, all this stuff is gonna be behind the floor mat. The floor mat's probably gonna come about that high, so you might see a little bit of orange wire, but no big deal. But all that stuff. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and put a zip tie on this, and then I'm gonna put my panel. Now, when you put this panel back on there, what you're gonna have to do with two hands, you have to lift this. I went ahead and secured that in between videos. Lift it up and just kind of slide it under. The lip of this golf cart needs to go in these little tabs. See that slot? And there's another slot right there where there's slots. Good thing this is a white cart. Black cart, you couldn't see it. But it'll slide in those holes. And then, of course, your 3 holes will be down here, which were full of sand till we rinsed it out. So let's go with that step, and then I'll slide the floor mat underneath. Okay, I just secured the floor mat, all 4 of those bolts, and that pedal group kind of centers the floor mat. Now, let me tell you this. You see how that is just kind of not all the way to the end. Some are a lot worse than that. For whatever reason, these things shrink. I don't know why. All right, so here is your retaining clip. So we'll have the little bulge facing up. There it goes. So that looks original, doesn't it, until you look in the side and realize all you do is plug in an extension cord. All right, so if you've made it this far with us, I think you're 2/3 there. So now we're going to place the battery down, and then I'm going to decide where I want to put this charger at. So on the 51 volts, I usually do it vertically there, but I want to look and see what kind of footprint this 60 amp hour. 60 amp hour looks like. It did have some white foam on top of there. They do a real good job. Use the handles, 2 hands. Let's slide this thing up and see how. All right, guys, I decided to put the charger over here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line up these holes. You see I've already put one in there. So this hole, or this, excuse me, this bolt that holds down the rear of the tub, and there's another one in the front, well, that's actually your frame rail. So you do need to pre-drill these holes. Eco sends 4 self-tapping screws, but that aluminum is pretty tough. So let's go ahead and take a 1/8 drill bit, and then once you get the hole, the pilot hole started, then take a 5/16 nut driver, drill, whatever. I use this little tool right here. Crazy, those things bite so hard. So anyway, I'll take it like this, and I'm actually going to drill these 2 in. Now the other 2 are going to go straight through plastic, but you know, to make it look good, we're going to put all 4 bolts in there. But anyway, those 2 there are not going to let go of that charger. All right, guys, so the way this battery sets in here, the terminals go towards the rear. So with my positive cable, I can reach it pretty easily, position it down. But my negative cable is going to be short. So the negative cable, you know, that went to the controller. If you remember when we took the 4-pin connector for the diagnostic port and removed the negative of the charging port, that is where this negative cable goes in at. So I've got some cable, so we're going to have to get a longer cable to come out of there. I've tried this in the past with other batteries in this size case, the old 72s, trying to drill a hole, come from this side, and it just never would stretch. So unfortunately, it needs to come way over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position this, then I'm going to measure from this outlet how much extra I need, and that way I'll know what size cable to make. And we're going to take that back loose, that T40, peel it back once I get my cable made up, and unbolt this cable. Maybe I'll save it for another application, but I do need to replace that cable. Okay, I just measured it. It needs to be 16 inches longer than what I've already have. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that apart, and let's get a cable 16 inches long. All right, guys, so there's the negative cable. It was 22 inches long. So if I need 16 more, I need a 38-inch cable. So let me work. Okay, guys, the next step is to start hooking wires to your battery, and also start doing some what I call cable management, kind of tidy this thing up a little bit. So I'm gonna unwind that little bread tie off my red and black cable that goes to my battery, and stretch it over here however I want it. Once I get it neat right here, I'll probably start stretching towards the charger and also this DIN connector. Remember I talked about that earlier in the video. So that's got a 90 degree. It's going to go down. It's going to plug into that screw tab right there. And then hanging off here, you've got 2 of these CAN connectors. Now over here on your charger, let's see, it's right there. So I'll unwind that. There's a connector. That connector will hook up to either one of these. It doesn't matter. So just pick one. And once you do that, I'm gonna stretch everything real nice. I tell you what, if you don't have a big bag of zip ties, you need to get one, because you're gonna go through them. But we'll zip tie those up, make it look real nice, trim off the tails, and let's see what it looks like. All right, so when we get ready to use the bolts, this was in the box with your battery. So these are just covers that will slide over your terminal ends, and then it's got the 13mm bolts. So the way we're gonna bolt these up is we're going to put the thinnest wire on the outside and the thickest wire up against the battery. So let's go from the battery back. So the thickest wire is going to be the main cables, your main positive and negative that go to your controller. The second thickest wire is going to be your battery charger, and then the last one is going to be your voltage reducer right here, and that's that little thin yellow and black wire. So put them in that order and snug those bolts. All right, so as I'm starting, I've got these snugged up. As I'm starting to tie my wires together, it's time for me to hook up my headlights. And if you may remember, I just now cut it, but we had a blue wire going to a battery that was in this driver's front compartment. So I went ahead and cut some of this wire off because it's just actually too long. And the negative for the wiring harness actually went to the negative cable. So I don't know if you saw that, but let me go ahead. I just kind of hung it on the wall. So this is the wire that I replaced, the cable, excuse me, for the negative side, and it had this yellow connector on there. Well, your wiring harness, your bucket harness, it plugs into that, and that basically just grounds out your 12-volt system. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that short also, and from your wiring harness, from your voltage reducer, there was 2 wires. Let's see here. Let's see if we can find them. There they are, right there. So there's 2 wires. Red's going to be your 12 or 13.5 out, and your black is your 13.5 negative. Now, a car system, just like you drive your automobile, it runs from 13.2 up to 14.5 or somewhere around there. Same thing with this golf cart. So this voltage reducer is putting out 13.5, which is fine for a 12-volt system. And if you remember, this battery, this lighting system was actually hooked to 2 batteries in series, which would have been 16 volts. These LEDs will handle that. Halogen, I don't know if I'd trust it. So anyway, so I'm going to take my 13.5 out, and I am going to connect it to my positive for my bucket harness and my negative, because that's the only option that this cart is going to run at 13.5 volts. So hopefully all that numbers did not confuse you. If it did, rewind it and watch it again. It's pretty simple. All right, guys, so got a little wire management done there, just a lot of zip ties, make sure everything was tight, get to the run tow switch pretty easily. That's the CAN communication cable and your charging port, the battery cables, and then on this side goes to your charging port. So as you can see, the gauge turned out pretty nice, and it's kind of hard to see with the glare, but charger's putting out 11.6 amps, 54%. So I'm gonna let it charge up tonight, and well, we're gonna take this cart for a little bit of a range test. 2018 Club Car Precedent. Guys, there's one thing that I forgot at my shop. I'm going to go pick it up tomorrow, and that is the mounting strap. So the way these batteries mount down, there's a strap that will hook underneath here, come across, and then it hooks inside of that hole, that little metal rod that goes underneath the cart. So forgot that, but it won't hurt me to charge it tonight. I'll go to my shop tomorrow and pick up my mounting strap. And I'm gonna do a range test. I told the customer I was gonna do that first, and then we'll get it back to them. So for tonight, I'm gonna turn in, but you'll see the rest of this video with the range test. All right, guys, it's the next morning, and what I did last night before I went to bed, I actually took my scanner and scanned everything once I got all my voltage and everything. And remember what I told you about spraying those bolts down? Well, guess what? The scanner showed the M-core was bad. So I emailed the customer, he emailed me back, he wants it fixed, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and getting ready to jump on my range test. But I wanted to show you, see how long those bolts are? So now this whole pedal assembly will come up, and you can see a little bit of corrosion down there, but not bad. But anyway, do those preventive things because you never know when it's going to help you out. In this case, I think it helped me. All right, just taking a leisurely ride around the neighborhood. The last range test I did on a 60 amp hour, I was in a rush. I had other customers behind it, so I was running it wide open the whole time, kind of an extreme test. This is a 2018 Club Car Precedent. It does have a speed code 4, but factory height tires, factory motor controller, cables, everything. So this is going to be your everyday golf cart. It does have a back seat on it, but no big deal. So we're going to see how far we can get out of this thing. So anyway, it's doing good. It's a good morning in South Carolina. So let's see what it does. All right, guys, I am at 12.6 miles. I'm still at 66%. So I'm gonna get pretty good range out of this car. I'm not sure if I showed you a picture earlier. I'm sure I probably did, but it's just a standard Club Car Precedent. So let me try to run this thing. All right, guys, so there you have it. So this is no joke. I had to get out my phone charger. My phone died before the eco battery did. So I'm down to 1%, and eco battery, 51 volt, 60 amp hour. Stock Club Car Precedent, stock size wheels, stock controller, and we got 33 miles out of this thing range test. So now I'm gonna plug it up, charge it up, and bring it back to my customer. But there's the conclusion of my range. Hey guys, so there it is. That's the conclusion of my video. Again, I know that I may have gotten lengthy because I can sometimes tend to over describe what's going on, but I've watched a lot of install videos, and then they'll skip a step, like where did that wire go? And I've done so many of these eco batteries. If I did miss something, put it in the comments. I try to respond to those as quick as I can. But holy cow, man, it went 33 miles on a full charge. So I think that was awesome. For the eco battery, I think this 60 amp hour is going to be a game changer for that neighborhood cruiser. So just a stock battery. So reach out to me if you want an eco battery. I am eco battery dealer. I can ship nationwide, and also Plum Quick Motors. Those are my two biggies. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to click and subscribe to the channel. That helps me out. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Y'all guys have a good one and be safe.